So one thing that is very constant is there's a lot of myth around what product marketing is actually about.
So the way I see it is that product marketing plays a very central function in a product organization. It forms the bridge between the central and the various markets that you're taking your product to. Choices of making a shift in the technology stack and going towards a cloud-based solution is not made very likely.
50 different use cases, which is also multiplied use cases into region, use cases into, let's say, Thailand, use cases for Indonesia, use cases we also build for Philippines, use cases we build for India, then use cases for...
I mean, as a product marketer, I don't want to deal with so much complexity. So it's not that I love to...
When we pivoted into focusing only on BFSI, what have you built and what was your...
Product marketing still plays a very important role there because they are the ones who understand the
Hello everyone, welcome to a new episode of Unwrapping Marketing One Piece at a Time. Today we have Varun Ravichandran, Vice President of Product Marketing and GTM at Vymo. Varun has been a close friend for the last couple of years. I've been working with Vymo since 4 years as a consultant, part of their marketing journey. Varun is one of the most talented product marketers I know, and he's built the GTM from scratch for Vymo. Varun, I would love for you to introduce yourself and probably give us a little bit in terms of your background, how you started this journey as a product marketer.
Sure. Thank you, Karthik, for having me on the show. It's really nice to be here and to have this conversation. So I think you've spoken a lot about sales, about marketing, about life in general. So it's good to be on your podcast. So I'll give a bit of a quick introduction. My path to product marketing has not been a very conventional one. And I think product marketing as a discipline itself is sort of emerging and a lot more clarity is emerging only now as to what is it as a very structured function. So a bit of my background. I post my master's in computer science in Johns Hopkins University. I got the opportunity to start the India Development Center for a US-based enterprise software company called Tioco. So I spent half my year in the US, half my year in India. And while my primary job was in designing and developing software products, I also got pushed into various other aspects of a business. I was a liaison between India, the US, and Israel. I was recruiting people. I was setting up the development center and so on. So very early, I got exposure into aspects of a business that really fascinated me. And after 4 years there, I realized that I wanted to go more directly into various other aspects of actually building a business, which I did not sort of have access to at that point in time. So I went to business school. And so this was 2014 where I went to INSEAD. Post-business school is when I got full-fledged into GTM and product marketing. So at that point in time, I got hired to be part of the strategic sort of leadership fast-track program at a company called Aptus, which is now called Conga, which was an enterprise software giant. We were building apps on top of Salesforce and Microsoft Dynamics, and I was part of the vertical markets team. And the mandate of the team was we were building complex enterprise SaaS on top of Salesforce and Dynamics, which solved for various aspects of the quote to cash space, CPQ, contract lifecycle management, order management, billing management, and so on. And the mandate of my team, or the team that I joined, was that so there were certain of these industry verticals around the globe that we wanted to succeed in. Deeply entrenched sort of verticals like manufacturing, healthcare, life sciences, telecommunications, and so on. And the mandate was to pull together various aspects of our business and line it up in the direction of success for those industries. So broadly, it was product marketing, GTM partnerships, but with the lens being industry. And while the sales team is split by region and by, say, enterprise versus mid-market and so on, those dimensions, the product team is based centrally and building various modules of the product. And the marketing team is again based by region and so on. The vertical markets team, which I was part of, had the lens of industry. And for the telecommunications and the high-tech industries that I was mapped to, my job was to make sure that we are packaged appropriately, we are positioned appropriately, we are enabled appropriately for success in those industries. And so that was the beginning of my journey into what, I mean, we can call product marketing, right? So though it is product marketing plus plus, so product marketing with a few other things, and we'll go into that, right? I mean, what is the definition of product marketing itself? But that is where I really honed my skills. So working in a very highly competitive, fast-paced, high-growth environment where we're competing against some of the giants in enterprise SaaS and going globally into some of these deeply competitive these industry verticals was my entry into product marketing. And I then moved back into India, worked with a company called Revv Information Services for a few years where I built their API business, and then moved into Vymo, where I had the chance really of building from scratch a lot of what I had learned in my time at Aptus. And so at Vymo, I have set up the go-to-market function, the product marketing and GTM function, which sort of sits in between our product function and the various market categories that we want to go to across the globe, and forms the bridges to market. And and a lot of the way in which we position ourselves for various industry segments, the way we package and present ourselves, the way our teams are equipped to be able to have systematic and repeatable go-to-market motions is what we try to do in the go-to-market team. So that's a broad journey. So if I were to summarize, I think some of the ways in which I sort of stumbled into a product marketing career and have built a profile around it are because of the fact that I do have a technical background in computer science, in product. At the same time, I do have an inclination and an interest in storytelling, packaging, storytelling. Simplifying complexity has been a constant thing that has helped me in all of my roles. And I think that is something that I've sort of drawn on in the product marketing role. And then, so there is also some other aspects of product marketing, which my journey has brought me to, and my journey has taught me, right, which we can go into. So I think in subsequent parts of the conversation. But that's been my sort of non-linear journey so far.
Okay. So let's talk about one major thing. Whoever I speak to, whoever I interview or speak about product marketing, right? So one thing that is very constant is there's a lot of myth around what product marketing is actually about. There's a lot of some companies. There are some companies that I know of. They have product marketing title across all the marketing folks. Okay, so what they do is they also do demand gen. Okay, so they do a bit of product marketing, but they predominantly do demand gen. They do SEO. They write, they create a strategy, SEO, keyword strategy, and stuff. So I want to know what exactly is product marketing and what constitutes, like, what makes a good product marketer. So what is his portfolio? What should he own, and what should he care about, or she care about?
Yeah. I think there is a little bit of sort of different organizations mean different things at this point in time when they say product marketing. But we are starting to move towards a common consensus on what it is. So the answer that I give is more based on my experience. It's more based on the way I have built the team, not necessarily the way it will be in all other organizations. So that's a caveat. And also, the definition of product marketing, I think, can be very different in enterprise SaaS versus, say, SaaS that is directed at small and medium-sized businesses or even B2C. So, we need to have all of these filters in mind when looking at whatever I have to say. Mine is from an enterprise SaaS perspective, but a lot of it might overlap. So the way I see it is that product marketing plays a very central function in a product organization. It forms the bridge between the central product team and the various markets that you're taking your product to. And the most specific sort of characteristics of this bridging function are that the product marketing is the one that is responsible for positioning the product for success, sort of in various market categories, for packaging the product for success in these various market categories, and for enabling and equipping the various market teams for success in these various categories. So tangibly, it sits in between product and sales, right? Though in many organizations, like in Vymo itself, we report directly to the CEO. So we sit parallel to product and sales from a reporting structure perspective. So we do have equal stake. So when it comes to decision making, but from a functional perspective, it is sort of like a middle office layer between the product and the engineering teams and the various sales functions, which means that you need to have enough of insight, enough visibility, and the ability to understand the details of what is happening in the product and in the engineering teams, while at the same time being biased towards sales from the perspective of sort of packaging it and presenting it. I think it's an important function more and more for organizations that are built, for example, from India and say who want to go to the world. And let me take, say, Vymo as an example, right? And what we have done over these last 4.5 years, some of the dimensions of go-to-market at Vymo are, firstly, we are built in India and we want to go global. So there is the global nature of GTM. Second is we are going into various sort of complex verticals where there are legacy software solutions which have been there for 20, 30 years, where the technology stack is very sort of deeply entrenched over these last few decades, where choices of making a shift in the technology stack and going towards a cloud-based solution is not made very lightly. And for each of these vertical segments, you have players or vendors or competitors who have built their entire organization just in that space. So you are competing against, for each of your vertical segments, you are competing against somebody who's built their entire organization in that space, right? And thirdly, the enterprise nature of GTM, where you need to, so there are long sales cycles, you need to convince both the business and the IT. What this means is that the way you sort of present yourself to various markets has to be extremely contextual, right? So it cannot be the same. It's not like it's not like a standardized solution which can just be clicked and bought by everybody around the globe. Depending on the market context, which is geography and your industry subvertical, the way you present yourself has to be extremely different at times. And it has to be extremely contextual to that market. You need to speak the language from the way you speak the language from the salesperson's mouth to the pitch deck to the way the product presents itself. And the way you, the understanding that you have of the industry value chain of competition has to sort of come out into the way you present yourself. And this has to be done for all markets in a scalable manner. So the sales teams need to know how to present themselves for one subvertical versus another. And more broadly, the same product has to be taken differently to each subvertical and to each geography. And this has to be done in a way that is very repeatable, very scalable. So there's a lot of complexity involved here. And I think the product marketing team, by being the one that sits centrally between product, marketing, and sales, is the one that is best placed to make this transition, to build these bridges. And I think what a lot of founders, SaaS founders, are realizing is that as they are building software for the globe, for various markets around the globe, and they want to set in place repeatable go-to-market motions, thinking through some of these questions around positioning, packaging, and enablement earlier in the journey will set them up for success.
Correct.
And so product marketing becomes more and more of a central function going forward, is my understanding of it.
So you touched upon, getting, helping sales team or, packaging product for different regions, right? I just have a follow-up question. So I see a lot of founders make this mistake of, let's say, go to market without properly defining ICP, very early, of course. Right. So even if they define ICP, they're probably taking all the messaging across, very flat messaging across all the regions. Okay. So when I say flat messaging, okay, so you have a product, you take the features of the product and you try to sell the features of the product across all over, right? So what advice do you have for founders who have a very flat messaging? And what I've also seen that didn't work or that doesn't work is every region uh, have a different set of problems when it comes to selling or selling to a let's say different industries, right? So for example, even at
Right.
Vymo, so we had a problem of, let's say, taking BFSI and similar solution or packaging to US, which you have to completely change, versus taking it to Southeast Asia also you have to tweak a little bit, versus
Yeah.
India, where we built initially for India, right?
Right.
But if it's a, let's say, a normal product which is self-serve, it's it's a little easy comparatively. But if it's a
Correct.
sales-led model, I think the packaging has to be different, the messaging has to be different, the solution has to be tweaked, or the product has to be tweaked based on uh, how that industry works in that particular region. Okay,
Right.
so
Mhm.
what kind of advice do you have for founders who build, let's say, validate the initial ICP behavior through hypothesis or through initial customers, and then how do they build their messaging packaging across when they want to go to other regions? And how have you done that for Vymo? I know since 4.5 years we have multiple use cases, right? So
Yeah.
probably there are 13 different use cases. Now take that and then, let's say, multiple regions, so you basically multiply that to 2 or 3 times, so which means you have to build everything for at least 50 different decks, or
Yeah.
50 different use cases, which is also
Yeah.
multiplied use cases into region, use cases
Correct.
into, let's say, Thailand, use cases for Indonesia, use
Right.
cases we also build for
Right.
Philippines, use cases we build for India, then use cases for US, right? So which means there are
Right.
multiple regions, there are multiple products, there are multiple use cases. How do you what suggestions do you have for founders who's trying to build that initial ICP and initial go to market for different regions?
Yeah. So I think there are a few different questions here, and I'll address them separately because I think they're all very important. Firstly, I think you made a point about the fact that sometimes organizations go with a very flat or a standard message across various regions and it might not really work. There, I'd like to say that I think the goal is always to have simplicity and standardization, right? That's the goal. So it'll be good to have a very simple and clean message which everybody gets and which is standard across the world and across all your buyer groups. Okay. But the fact of the matter is, with most SaaS companies, that might not be the case. It might not be possible, or the product, might not lend itself to this sort of a simplified, sort of flat messaging. As a product marketer, I don't want to deal with so much complexity. So it's not that I love to go so contextually sort of nuanced for each region. I would like it to be a very standard and simple message, which then we can focus more on the delivery of the message, right? On the enablement part rather than the packaging and the presentation and the contextual sort of positioning of it. But the fact is, reality is that most products and enterprise software, in particular, is of such a nature that you cannot take the same message everywhere. The market context is extremely important. Different people perceive a product differently. So the market, the maturity of the technology stacks um, in different sort of regions that we're selling to is very different, and so on. And so the context awareness is very important. And I think organizations need to learn that sooner rather than later, that they do need to be nimble in terms of being able to position themselves differently. And I'll come back to what are the ways in which you can position yourself differently while still retaining the core of who you are, right? And not losing the essence of uh, what is common to who you are, right? We'll get back to that. So you spoke about ICP. I think it's important, especially in the, I think in the early days of an organization, for sure, when you might get pulled in multiple different directions and so on, to narrow down into at least some segments that you really want to go after and build your product and your positioning for those segments. And I'll take the example of Vymo to talk about both ICP as well as what you spoke about, which is, dealing with the complexity of so many market categories and regions. We, sometime maybe 2 or 3 years back, we decided that, look, we have a lot of, some of the early large customers that we built for was BFSI, were in the BFSI space. So our product team, our engineering setup, some of our GTM setup, and so on was built around some of these large sort of BFSI motions, and we had to make a choice as an organization for not going too broad. So let us focus in some dimension, right? We did want to go global, and if the regional dimension as well as the vertical dimension was both open, then we might be scattering ourselves too thin. So we thought, let's lock one dimension, which is BFSI, and then still go global to BFSI. And so let's build the muscle of thinking about the problem statement of banks and insurance companies. Let's build that into our product. Let's build that into our post sales. Let's build that into our GTM. And hence we narrow it down to BFSI. Then it becomes clear. So then you know that for each of these regions, since we are enterprise software, you look at your target sort of organizations and so on, it's a finite list. So you have a finite list of organizations in each of your regions that you're going after. And so the messaging and the sort of demand gen motions and so on, and your brand building more broadly can be targeted at these segments. So that was a decision we took about, say, 3 years ago, that we'll focus on BFSI. And then you sort of create, what is the ideal customer profile for Vymo? So which are organizations which have these large field sales use cases within BFSI? So large enterprise customers who have tens of thousands of field sales teams and who have some of the problem statements that we sort of cater to. So that becomes the ICP, and then you build your sort of positioning and your packaging for that ICP. So it's important to have clarity in some dimension. So while you can be sort of fluid in some of the other dimensions, right? So we locked BFSI. So that is one thing that we locked, and then you build the ideal customer profile, right? Which broadly in our case was enterprise BFSI, who have a large field sales team. And so there are various dimensions that you add to identify the ICP, and the broad ICP in our case was that. But even with sort of defining sort of BFSI as the sort of segment that we wanted to operate in, so there are many within BFSI, there are lot of industry sub-verticals with a lot of different characteristics. Insurance is very different to banking. Say within insurance, one of the distribution channels that we sort of cater to, which might be the agency distribution channel, is very different to bank assurance. Within banking, retail lending is very different to, say, branch banking or wealth banking. And these differences are magnified when you bring in the sort of regional lens. So you don't have a choice but to deal with complexity. And the way we typically do it is, so there is no smart answer. I think you have to get in and choose your battles one stage at a time. Pick certain market categories that you want to succeed in each year. You can't just say that I'm going to go, say, global, say, insurance, and then go blast everything across the globe at the same time. You have to pick a few regions and a few sub-verticals where you have decided as an organization that you want to first set up a systematic go-to-market motion for, spend time in those market segments, and then understand these the details of that market segment, build out the value chain on paper, see how your solution can solve for the problems of that industry, build the packaging for that, and then validate it, test it, and so on. Which is a whole sales cycle itself in that market segment, and then move to another geography. So at any point in time, you might not be able to do this for more than maybe 3 or 4 market categories around the globe. And the market categories, like a region plus a sort of vertical, right? And maybe for horizontal software, right, which is not verticalized, you pick a few regions or you pick a few use cases broadly and you go after them. But pick your use cases wisely. You will not be able to hit all the packaging needs that you need at one point, but pick some of these areas that you want to succeed in, year on year, sort of grow that portfolio. So that is broadly how I would do it, and we can go into more examples of how to make this happen.
Correct. So which means that picking a use case or picking a region also depends on a lot of initial factors, which is early customers adopting your product or early customers liking your product, right? And then it will probably evolve at some point. Doesn't mean that Of course, for an early stage company, what I've also seen that they're very stubborn on ICP, but especially when it comes to a very industry agnostic or a, let's say, horizontal product, right?
Yeah.
It's very difficult to define initially. It is very difficult to define the ICP exactly, at the start, and then just go behind only those ICP. Because for us, as far as I know, Vymo also, we started selling not to BFSI, but for some
Yeah.
other initial customers, right? Like Swiggy, for example, was
Yeah.
an initial customer.
Correct.
And then later we pivoted into focusing on only on BFSI. So
Yeah.
when we pivoted into focusing only on BFSI, what have you built, and what was your major OKRs? Like, what is, of course, it is based on the need, right? But what was your major OKRs, and what is your OKRs right now? I think probably for product marketer, I believe there are 4 or 5 major OKRs, which is enablement is one of them, messaging,
Yes.
product marketing, packaging. Of course, like packaging, all of that is some of the OKRs, right?
Yeah.
So what have you built, and what was your OKR when you started that, PFSI, focus ICP, and how has it evolved for you in the last 5 years at Vymo for you?
Sort of before going into the OKRs, I think one thing that you mentioned, which I'll sort of touch upon, is I think a lot of my previous answer was more relevant for verticalized, industry focused SaaS go to market motion. But for example, let us say you have a platform. You have a platform that developers can come and build on top of, and you want to go to market with that platform. So then the needs will be different. So then you will focus more on awareness of the platform. So brand becomes important. The community building becomes important. So a lot of what like a traditional marketing team would do, lot more collaboration on that also becomes important, so that more people know how to use your platform. Thought leadership becomes important, and so on. Product marketing still plays a very important role there, because they are the ones who understand the nuances of the technology details of the platform. For example, what are the possibilities of that platform, plus what are the limitations, and then based on that, what is the story that you want to tell to market, and then work with the various aspects of demand and brand to take that to market. So there the construct of product marketing will be different, but a lot of the core skills that a product marketer will need will still be the same. And the core dimension or the core function of product marketing as building the bridge between the product and engineering and the market, so that will still remain the same. So coming back to KPIs, we have a few different KPIs, and all of these KPIs have a shared component of them. So that's also very interesting and sometimes powerful, sometimes fun, and sometimes challenging and frustrating nature of product marketing. It is that you don't own your end destiny fully. All my KPIs have a shared component, right? So broadly, some of the ways in which I measured are firstly pipeline, because you package, you position, all of that is a very theoretical, intellectual exercise. It needs to resonate with the, with the marketplace, with the ICP. So pipeline. So there it is shared OKR, with the counterparts in marketing for the market segments that we are going after and the regions that we're going after. Secondly is logos, right? So the same sort of thing that you can't just build a package in isolation and say that I have run a sales enablement program with so many people attending it, so many classroom sessions, so many self-learning sessions, so many demos, etc. have been built, and so on. So the packages that you have built need to stand the test of market. Right? Customers need to feel that you are speaking their language, solving their problems. Sales teams need to feel empowered enough that they can go and take that very powerfully and win deals. And the story that we're telling, right? The value articulation that we're providing in product marketing has to not be something that you're building on a deck in a sort of boardroom somewhere, but it has to resonate. So logo wins. And the way we do it at Vymo is that for each year, we pick certain market categories where we want to focus in. And my measure on the logos are for those market categories. Right? So sales is around the globe has various sort of targets that they have for each region. I will not be mapped each year to all segments, so for all the regions, but the ones that we have picked as strategic. And the only way that I know that my packaging is successful is if I can win 5 logos, let us say, in that region. So we went after, was it 2 years back, we said that we are going after the collections market in India and Southeast Asia. Right? The only way that we knew that we were successful was because we were able to build pipeline and we had the first few logos. So that is broadly the two tangible OKRs. And then, so there are a lot of functional OKRs. So which is the number of solution packages I've built, or the number of baseline integrated solution demos that I've built, the number of sales enablement programs that I've run, certifications on those programs, adoption on those programs. What is the time to first win for the salespeople? Can we bring that down? So those are more functional and enablement related OKRs. But at the end of the day, it has to be revenue linked. So pipeline and logo wins, which means that I have to work very closely with sales and marketing and sometimes step on their toes. So a lot of interesting conversations there as well. Yeah.
So just a question on that, right? So what do you expect from product marketers when you hire them, and what are the key skills? Because what I've seen in general, we've had this conversation before. The market is typically pretty expensive, especially when hiring a product marketer. Right. And then when I saw how you built this team, it was very interesting for me because you hired people from not from a traditional product marketing background, but from probably a domain background and built it. So what do you look for when you hire a product marketer in your team? What are the key skills that you look for?
Yeah, this is an interesting topic, and it sort of constantly keeps my understanding of who can be a good product marketer is pretty fluid. So, so let me try to share my thoughts on this. But firstly, the way I have set up the product marketing and GTM function in Vymo is slightly different to how other companies have set it up. So I'll perhaps spend some time on that because we have some sub-functions inside the GTM function. So, one is what we're talking about, which is global product marketing. So these are the folks who build the messaging, the positioning, and who build all the collaterals, the data sheets, the decks, and do the sales enablement and do the pricing and so on. So that's a traditional product marketing function. Hand in hand with that, the second parallel function which you have in the GTM team is the industry solutions function. So these are engineers. These are full stack engineers who have been pulled out of the core engineering function. So this, our team of developers and integrations developers, full stack developers, backend developers, plus so QA specialists and so on, who sit in the go-to-market function. And they work in tandem with the product marketing team. And the reason for that is that my conception of product marketing is not something that stops at a pitch deck. You should be able to showcase what you're saying on a pitch deck. Else, at some point, there will be a disconnect. And for enterprise SaaS, which is going global, this can be a very costly disconnect. If you are just putting whatever you want on a pitch deck and building a very powerful story, very attractive story, which you take to market, your sales teams will love it and we'll sell. And then when it comes to deploying it, we will realize that we're in trouble, right? At the same time, if you only sell what you have at any point in time, then you might not be able to present a very powerful story because you are bound by the limitations of what you currently have. So how do you identify what is the reasonable extension of the current product, which is powerful enough to land in market, while at the same time being safe enough that your teams can actually deploy within the sort of promised time window. So this is a balancing act that all large number of SaaS companies have to do. And my way of looking at it was that the product marketing can be the one who does this balancing act. So, so this balancing act is done in all organizations. It's not a new thing that I'm bringing up for discussion, but in the way that we do it in Vymo is that my function is responsible for this balancing act, which means by having product marketers and what might be part of pre-sales or sales engineering in some other function be part of GTM team as well, we build a product wrapper and we build a messaging wrapper hand in hand. So I'll give a tangible example. So we're going to the US, or say we are going, take the US as an example, and we want to build a powerful messaging for the insurance, for the agency distribution channel in the US. Okay. So we first go and understand the industry itself. We speak to in-house experts, and we have many in-house. We speak to sort of experts from the industry. We go and do consulting sessions with them, etc. And we draw out what is broadly speaking, what is the value chain of distribution in that industry, right? So you understand the personas, their interactions, the tech stack, and so on. And so that becomes the starting point. So that is done in isolation usually. It takes a quarter or so. So you go and build that deep understanding of that industry. Then, based on that understanding of the industry, you build your messaging document, which then flows into all the components of your product marketing stack. So what is your solution to that industry, which will bring together all the components of your product in a way that solves tangibly for an end-to-end solution for that industry, right? So what is your story, basically? Why can your product solve tangibly for a very meaningful problem statement for that industry based on your understanding of that industry? So that translates into your pitch deck, your data sheet, your competitive battle cards, your website, and the videos that you build, and so on. So these all become your messaging and sales collateral that teams can take to market, and the collaterals and the messaging that the marketing team can then take and blast it out across channels, right? So that's the traditional product marketing aspect of it. But hand in hand, we also have the industry solutions team that is building hand in hand with that. So that same understanding that you have of the industry, is not just translating into a pitch deck, but it's also translating into a strong baseline demo. So you take the various components of your product, stitch it together into a wrapper sort of market accelerator for that industry segment. And now you have a product configuration with integrations which are set up for that industry segment. So with data and intelligence which has been set up for that industry segment. With workflows, taxonomy, product details, etc., which have been set up for that industry segment. And now the go-to-market package that I have has the collateral or the messaging components and also has a product component. And so the sales teams will pitch from a deck, and the sales or the pre-sales teams will demo from a product sort of configuration which has been set up. And these both speak the same language. They're both saying the same story. And so that helps to drive consistency in the way we present ourselves to market. It also helps in bringing feedback from the market very rapidly back into our solution, because we are hearing what is happening in the market, and based on what needs to shift in our positioning, this shift can happen both on the pitch deck and on the way the demo is presented. And then it becomes a very tangible delivery to the product team and a very validated sort of package delivered to the product team saying, so this is what works in the market. Here is the bare bones of a solution that we are finding resonating with the market. Now this can become input to your product roadmap, right? So product marketing also, in my definition, goes into solutioning or into aspects of what is traditionally, I would say, pre-sales or sales engineering. So bring that together and build very predictable packages. Very strong baseline packages for each of our market categories, which the various market teams can take to market and sell with. So that's the, so that's the way it has been built in Vymo. So coming back to your question, sorry for going on all of these detours.
I think that will probably set the context also in terms of what, when you're hiring, right? So what are you looking for? Because I think traditionally you also explained that you also run the product marketing aspects of things and then the solution and engineering pre-sales side of things as well, right? So that will set the context. So now the question about hiring.
So question about hiring. I think in general, product marketing is something that sits, so we can make it very simple and look at the two words. As a product marketing has to bring together a sort of skill set which where you have the the ability and the willingness to go into details of product, so which is the product part of product marketing. So you need to be able to understand product to the level of a product manager, not to the level of an engineer. So you don't need to go and build the product, but you need to understand the product and the technical nuances of it at least as well as a product manager. So that's one part of product marketing. And the second aspect is that you need to be able to present that in a simple and a clear manner, right? And you need to be able to package it in a way that tells a very powerful story where the buyer knows what problem it is solving for them in a very clear manner without muddling them. So that is broadly the marketing part of product marketing. What I found in these last few years hiring product marketers is that, I mean, most people come from one of these two directions. So they are either stronger on the product side of product marketing, so where they have more technical depth, they can go into details and read solution documents, they can sit and have conversations with engineering and so on, but they might not have been exposed to the marketing aspects of product marketing. So they might not have built too many pitch decks, they might not have built too many website pages, and so on, right? And so for them, yes, I mean, so that is one sort of profile that I see. And the second sort of profile is folks who are more from a marketing bent of mind, who are more creative, who might have been in growth marketing earlier, who might have been in content marketing earlier, who can write beautiful blogs and who can design videos beautifully, but I mean, might not have the level of depth to get into product. So the fact of the matter is, you will not find somebody who's at the center beautifully for the most part, right? You will have to find people on one of these two sides and then work with them to bring them to the center. So what I see in general from a product marketing profile is, so do they have strength in one of these two, right, which goes without saying, and then do they have the inclination or the ability to pick up the other part of it, which is what I test. So for people who are more purely from the marketing side, I give them some tough assignments to go into a solutioning document, read it, and then come back to me with a simple way in which they summarize details of a product. Or for somebody who's more from a product or a technical side, I give them, or I test them on their ability to craft a compelling story and to write a very simple blog, right? And usually I find, based on my experience, that sort of given the enterprise SaaS complexities that are involved, some of the people who have more of an engineering background, who have more of a consulting background, and who have more, so they might have been an analyst and they might have come out of business school, but so they have been looking at sort of industry value chains, technical details, and so on. I have found it easier to take some of that profile and build some of the marketing skills into them. So that has been the way that I have hired. But broadly speaking, for a product marketing person, it's a very generalist profile. But I mean, it's a profile where you need to have comfort with getting into product details. You need to have the ability, the interest to get into industry details as well as product details. And you need to have the ability to simplify this for market consumption. And for people who, a lot of people like me who are from an engineering background, then went to business school. So they have a little bit of inclination both on the product side and the business side of things. I'm finding that the product marketing is a good space for them. So a lot of former engineers, a lot of people who have been even in finance and consulting earlier, and then want to move into actually growing SaaS company and being on the front lines of GTM, product marketing is a good place for them to build on some of their core strengths and then learn some of these new aspects and bring it together. So I don't know if that answered your question, but
it did. I think, so in terms of what do you expect, because as I know, Vymo's product marketing GTM function is a little different from what traditionally others do, right? So they do only one side of the product marketing, which is the tech videos and explainer videos or whatever, right? So that is typically
Yeah.
how what product marketers take care of. Thank you for watching, guys. Please subscribe to Rev Growth and stay tuned for the next part of the episode. Thanks again for watching.